All right, let's dive into The Power of Awakening by Dr. Wayne Dyer. You know, you mentioned wanting to explore like personal growth and finding a little more peace. And this book really seems to hit on those themes. One of the things that really stood out to me was this concept of dying while alive as a path to freedom. Like a
Yeah.
pretty intense idea, right?
Yeah, Dyer definitely doesn't shy away from those big, kind of challenging concepts.
Hmm.
But that's what makes his work so powerful. He presents these radical ideas, but then he breaks them down in a way that makes them feel, well, almost achievable, you know?
Yeah, for sure. There's also this whole thing about taming the ego. Honestly, I wasn't even sure what that meant before I read this. What does it actually look like to like tame your ego in everyday life?
Well, Dyer outlines these 7 characteristics of the ego, but the one that really hit home for me was its love for drama. The ego just thrives on conflict. It's always looking for reasons to feel victimized or superior.
Oh, I can totally relate to that. It's so easy to get caught up in those stories we tell ourselves.
Right.
So, like, if we're constantly playing the victim or the hero, how does that keep us from finding peace?
It keeps us stuck. It's like this cycle of suffering. We're always looking outside of ourselves for someone or something to blame for our unhappiness.
So it's about taking responsibility.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we have the power to choose our thoughts and our reactions.
So dying while alive in this context could mean, like, letting go of those dramatic stories we tell ourselves, letting go of those old patterns of thinking and behaving that aren't really serving us anymore.
Yeah, it's about shedding those layers of ego that prevent us from experiencing our true nature, which Dyer suggests is pure love and joy.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And in the foreword, Brendan Burchard talks about finding peace amidst all the chaos of the 2020 pandemic. It seems like external chaos often forces us to look inward, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. When the external world feels unpredictable and uncertain, we naturally seek stability and peace within ourselves. And that's what's so powerful about Dyer's teachings. He offers this roadmap for navigating those really turbulent times.
Yeah, that makes sense. Burchard actually shares this really personal story about a near-death experience he had when he was just 19. He was feeling suicidal after a breakup, and then he was in a serious car accident. It sounds incredibly intense.
Yeah, it was a major turning point for him. He talks about realizing in that moment as he was pulling himself through the shattered windshield that he desperately wanted to live. It was this profound awakening for him.
Wow, it sounds like that experience really shifted his whole perspective on life.
Yeah.
So moving into the book itself, how does Dr. Dyer actually define what it means to be an awakened person?
He doesn't really offer this like rigid definition. He highlights certain key characteristics instead. For instance, he talks about how awakened people are able to notice the flaws in others without judgment. It's not about condoning bad behavior, but it's more about recognizing that everyone's on their own unique journey.
Right, that makes sense. I can see how that would create more compassion and understanding in relationships. Is that kind of what he means by dying while alive, letting go of judgment, and embracing acceptance?
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. He also talks about experiencing fewer aha moments because things that used to seem confusing now suddenly make sense. It's like you're operating from a higher level of awareness.
Right. That actually reminds me of something else Dyer mentions. This idea that we're not actually our physical forms, but rather pure thought, pure energy. Could you maybe elaborate on that a bit?
Sure, this is a core concept in Dyer's work. He's essentially saying that our true essence goes beyond the physical body. We are energy, and energy can't be destroyed, right? It just changes form.
Right. He tells this story about a woman who's struggling to stop biting her fingernails. She had all these psychological explanations for her behavior. But Dyer's solution was incredibly simple.
Oh, yeah, he told her to just keep her fingers out of her mouth. It highlights this idea that we often overcomplicate things, when really the solution might be right in front of us.
It's so true. It's like a reminder that we often have way more control over our actions than we realize. So how can we apply this principle to other areas of our lives where we're feeling stuck?
Dyer encourages us to identify the simplest action we can take right now to move towards what we want. It might not solve the entire problem immediately, but it gets us moving in the right direction.
It's like taking that first step on a long journey.
Yeah.
You don't need to see the whole path laid out in front of you to start walking, right?
Exact.
Speaking of journeys, Dyer makes this fascinating connection between sleep, dreams, and even death.
That's one of the most intriguing parts of the book, for sure. He suggests that when we sleep, we're basically leaving our physical forms and entering a realm of pure thought.
And he points out that we don't usually fear sleep, even though we're losing consciousness and entering this unknown realm every single night.
Right. He uses this as a way to reframe how we think about death. Like, what if death is just another transition from form to formlessness?
So instead of clinging to our physical forms and possessions, we can view life as this temporary experience, a dreamlike state where we get to explore and learn and grow.
Exactly.
And that kind of brings us back to this idea of taming the ego, right?
Yeah, full circle.
Okay, let's dive into that a little bit more. You mentioned earlier that the ego loves drama. What are some other characteristics of the ego that prevent us from experiencing true peace?
Well, another big one is that constant need to be right. The ego is always comparing itself to others, which leads to these feelings of either superiority or inadequacy.
Oh man, that's so true. I can definitely see how that need to be right creates conflict and prevents us from really connecting with other people. And Dyer even goes as far as to say that the ego is insane, right?
Yeah, he does. And he uses that word very intentionally to highlight how the ego tends to believe in separation. It clings to this illusion that we're separate from each other and separate from like the divine or source energy.
So how do we even begin to tame this ego that's causing us so much trouble?
Well, that's a great question. And it's something we'll explore in more detail in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm definitely eager to learn more about that. This is already giving me a lot to think about.
So we were talking about that tricky ego, right? Trying to figure out how to manage it.
Yeah, how to tame it so it doesn't run our lives.
Exactly. And Dr. Dyer introduces this really powerful concept, surrender.
Surrender. Honestly, that word kind of makes me a little uncomfortable. Doesn't that mean giving up, becoming passive?
That's exactly the kind of response our ego wants us to have. It wants to hold on to control, even if it's causing us stress. Dr. Dyer offers a different perspective, though. He tells this great story about a sage and a scorpion.
Ooh, I love a good story.
So this wise sage is sitting by a river. He sees a scorpion struggling in the water.
Oh, no.
And he reaches out to rescue it. But, scorpions being scorpions, it stings him.
Ouch.
Right. But a little while later, the scorpion falls in again. And even though the sage knows he'll probably get stung again, he still reaches out to save it.
That's incredible. But I can't help but wonder, why would he do that?
That's the question that gets to the heart of surrender. The sage understands that it's in the scorpion's nature to sting, just like it's in the river's nature to flow. He doesn't try to change the scorpion or resist its behavior. He just accepts it and acts with compassion.
So it's not about giving up our own power. It's more about recognizing that there are things outside of our control.
Exactly. It's about surrendering to the natural order of things, trusting that there's a bigger picture unfolding, even if we don't see it yet.
Okay, surrender, trust, flow.
Right.
I'm starting to see a theme here. But how do we actually put this into practice? Our to-do lists and calendars don't really encourage us to just go with the flow.
It's definitely a practice. Like anything, it takes effort and awareness. Dr. Dyer suggests that we start by noticing where we're holding on too tightly, like needing to be right, expecting things to go a certain way, fearing the unknown. Ask yourself, what would surrender look like in this situation?
Can I just let things unfold naturally?
Exactly.
So it's about loosening our grip and trusting that things will work out, even if it's not how we planned it.
Right. It's about recognizing that we don't have to control every little detail. We can allow space for the unexpected.
And trust that even the challenges and setbacks can lead to growth.
Exactly.
This whole idea of surrender makes me think of another concept Dr. Dyer talks about, the power of visualization.
Yes.
He says that our thoughts create our reality, and that we can use visualization to shape our experiences.
Absolutely. He has a whole chapter dedicated to this. He explains that visualization is all about harnessing the power of our thoughts, which are essentially energy, and energy creates form. So when we focus our thoughts on what we want to create, we send out these energetic vibrations that can attract those things into our lives.
He tells his incredible story about being on a plane where the landing gear malfunctioned. And they had to make this emergency landing.
Oh, yeah. And everyone else on the plane was freaking out. But Dr. Dyer stayed totally calm. He just focused on visualizing a safe landing.
And what's amazing is that he was the only passenger who actually made it to his destination that day. Everyone else had to stay overnight because of flight cancellations. But he got on another flight and continued his journey.
It's a perfect example of how powerful our thoughts can be. He chose to focus on what he wanted, on a safe outcome. He didn't let fear control his thoughts.
So how do we start using visualization in our own lives? Do we just sit around and daydream about winning the lottery?
It's a bit more intentional than that. Dr. Dyer recommends making visualization a regular practice. Find a quiet space, close your eyes, and create this vivid image of what you want. Engage all your senses. What does it look like? Feel like?
And most importantly, feel the emotion, right?
Yes, feel the emotion as if you've already achieved it.
Like you already have it.
Exactly.
But does it always work?
Dr. Dyer emphasizes that it's not like a magic formula. It's a powerful tool that works best when combined with intention and action.
So our thoughts are like seeds we plant.
Yeah, and visualization helps us nurture those seeds.
But we still need to tend the garden by taking action.
Right.
He mentions a study about unemployed executives who were using visualization to find new jobs.
Oh, yes, that one's fascinating. They divided the executives into 3 groups. Each group visualized themselves getting a new job, but they did it for different lengths of time. One group for 15 minutes a day, one for 30, and one for 45 minutes.
And the group that visualized for 45 minutes got the best jobs, right?
That's where it gets interesting. They didn't necessarily get the best jobs. Instead, each group landed jobs that aligned with the level of job they had visualized.
So if they picture themselves in a lower paying job, that's what they ended up with.
Exactly. It shows how powerful our thoughts can be, even the subconscious ones. We need to be really mindful of what we're focusing on.
Wow, that's incredible. This whole conversation about surrender and visualization reminds me of another practice that Dr. Dyer talks about, meditation.
Oh, absolutely. Meditation is one of the most powerful tools we have for finding inner peace.
It calms the mind, helps us connect with our inner wisdom.
Exactly. And Dr. Dyer makes meditation really approachable. He explains that it's not about emptying the mind completely, which, let's face it, is nearly impossible. It's about training the mind to be more focused and present.
So it's about noticing those thoughts without getting carried away by them.
Yes. It's about finding that stillness in the midst of all the mental chatter and cultivating inner peace that doesn't depend on external circumstances. He even shares a really simple technique using a 24-second shot clock.
Like in basketball.
Yep. He sits down, closes his eyes, and visualizes a shot clock counting down from 24 to 1. If any other thoughts come up, he starts over.
That's clever. It's like a mental workout.
It is. It helps us build that muscle of concentration, which can be really helpful in all areas of our lives.
He also talks about the other benefits of meditation, like better sleep and less anxiety.
Oh, yeah, those are huge. Meditation can be life-changing.
I've always been a little intimidated by meditation. I feel like I get distracted so easily.
I think a lot of people feel that way. But you don't have to be a Zen master to meditate. It's really just about showing up and practicing. Dr. Dyer actually tells this funny story about meditating in Hawaii. He's sitting there trying to find his Zen, and all of a sudden, a landscaper starts mowing the lawn right next to him.
Oh, no.
Right? Totally disrupted the peace and quiet.
Did he give up on his meditation?
At first, he was frustrated, but then he had this brilliant idea. He decided to use the sound of the lawnmower as his mantra.
So he embraced the noise instead of resisting it.
Exactly. He focused on the rhythm of the motor and actually let it deepen his meditation.
That's so cool. It's like a reminder that we can find stillness anywhere.
We can create our own inner sanctuary no matter what's happening around us.
This brings us to another fascinating topic from the book, enlightenment.
Ah, yes.
Dr. Dyer presents enlightenment not as this mystical state that's only for like monks or something,
Yeah.
but it's something that anyone can achieve.
Exactly. It's not about escaping reality. It's about embracing it fully.
And finding that deep sense of peace and connection
Yes.
with ourselves, with others, with the universe.
There's a story about Ram Dass offering LSD to his guru, right?
Oh, yes, that's a classic. Ram Dass, he was this well-known spiritual teacher. He thought the LSD would enhance his guru's spiritual experience.
Okay.
But the guru, after taking a significant dose, said it wasn't working.
Wait, he took LSD and felt nothing?
That's right. And Dr. Dyer explains that this was because the guru was already enlightened. He didn't need any external substance to alter his consciousness.
He was already experiencing that bliss and connection.
Exactly.
So what does it actually mean to be enlightened in everyday life? What are the signs? That's a great question. And it's something we can delve into as we explore the practical applications of Dr. Dyer's teachings in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot in this deep dive into the power of awakening, the characteristics of an awakened person, taming the ego, even touched on enlightenment, all fascinating stuff. But how do we actually use all this to create a more joyful and fulfilling life? A heaven on earth, as Dr. Dyer calls it.
That's really what it's all about, right? Taking these principles and applying them so we can experience more peace, more purpose, more happiness, basically. And one of the first things Dr. Dyer suggests is letting go of those rigid likes and dislikes that we all tend to cling to.
Oh, those strong preferences about how things should be. I know I'm guilty of that.
We all are, to some degree. But Dr. Dyer points out that these attachments, they create a lot of unnecessary stress.
So instead of trying to force reality to fit our expectations, we should just accept things as they are.
Exactly. It's about choosing our battles, recognizing that we don't need to control everything. It doesn't mean we become passive or give up on our goals. It's about finding that balance between taking action and surrendering to what is.
I can see how that shift in perspective could free up a lot of energy. Like, if we're not constantly fighting against reality, maybe we could actually get more done.
That's exactly what Dr. Dyer suggests. He even offers a technique called recapitulation. It involves going back and consciously releasing the negative energy from past experiences.
So kind of like clearing out the old to make space for the new.
Exactly. As we let go of what no longer serves us, whether it's old hurts, limiting beliefs, we create space for something new to emerge.
So our true purpose, maybe.
It could be our deepest desires, a renewed sense of passion for life. Dr. Dyer talks about how this process led him to identify his own deep desire, which was teaching self-reliance.
And he really did live that out, didn't he? From comforting new kids at the orphanage to teaching self-directedness in the military, writing all those books.
He absolutely walked the talk, and he encourages us to do the same. Listen to that inner voice and go after the things that light us up, regardless of what other people think or what we think our limitations are.
That makes me wonder, how do we even know what our true purpose is? What if we haven't had that aha moment yet?
Dr. Dyer says our purpose often reveals itself through our experiences. Our interests, the things we're drawn to, even if they seem a little unconventional. Pay attention to those recurring themes in your life, the things that keep calling to you.
Trust that inner compass, even if we don't know where it's leading.
Exactly. He also emphasizes choosing love over fear. Our ego often tries to keep us small and safe by whispering all these messages of fear and limitation.
Ugh, I know that voice. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough.
That's the ego trying to maintain control. Dr. Dyer says, choose love instead. See the good in yourself and others. Focus on your strengths.
Believe in our potential.
Yes. He tells this great story about an Indian saint who was being escorted into this fancy event. Right before stepping onto the red carpet, the saint noticed a dog licking a sore on its leg. And instead of just ignoring it, he bent down and started tending to the dog's wound.
Wow.
It's such a beautiful example of humility and compassion. The saint didn't let his ego or social expectations stop him from acting with love.
So it's not about these grand gestures. It's about making small, conscious choices to act from a place of love in our everyday lives.
Exactly. Seeing that spark of the divine in everyone we meet. Extending grace and understanding even when it's hard. We're all connected, and our actions have this ripple effect.
It's a beautiful vision.
Yeah.
And what I love about Dr. Dyer is that he gives us practical tools, ways to actually integrate these concepts into our lives.
He reminds us that we have the power to create the life we want, to experience heaven on earth, not as some far-off destination, but as a state of being that we cultivate.
I'm feeling pretty inspired right now. This deep dive has given me so much to think about.
Me too. Dr. Dyer's wisdom is timeless.
One thing that really stuck with me was this idea about the power of thought. If our thoughts really do create our reality, that's a lot of responsibility, but also a lot of power.
It is both empowering and humbling, for sure.
And this whole concept that we're not just our physical forms, that we're something much bigger, more expansive.
Something eternal.
It makes me wonder, what if we're not even our thoughts? If thoughts are energy? Could there be something even more fundamental to who we are, something beyond the mind?
That's a great question, and one that Dr. Dyer encourages us all to explore. There's always more to learn, more to discover.
Well, on that note, I want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the power of awakening. I hope you found it as insightful and inspiring as I have.
It's been a pleasure, and I encourage you to keep seeking, keep growing, and keep awakening to the power within you.